it banned all outdoor advertising in the city of São Paulo, Brazil. Now, that is an incredibly aggressive use limitation response on the conveyance of information in the marketplace, an incredibly aggressive response. But historically, it's been around for a long time. In Paris, if you walk around, you'll notice signs like this, défense d'afficher, which means posters prohibited, or you can't poster here. And it comes from the 1890s, when they had trouble with broadside posters being put all over the walls of Paris. So they created a law that said, if the building owner puts up this sign, défense d'afficher, on the side of their building, you can't put posters on that building. And so the posters don't exist anymore. I think of all the beautiful, like, Toulouse-Lautrecs and things that would have been up around the city through that era. If you walk around the city, the posters are certainly all long since gone, but the prohibitions still exist. We see it in other places too. This is a technological response. This is a little plugin that recognizes banner sizes, standardized banner sizes, and plugs in art. So consumers, in a response to citizens, people, in response to the amount of advertising that they were receiving, plugged in this little browser plugin, and whenever it saw a server call for that size banner, that standardized pixel width and height, it would plug in a piece of art. This is not only disruptive to the advertiser, but to the value proposition and the business model for the free content on that website. You know, if they're not generating money from the advertising, that's pretty disruptive. It can kill businesses and business models as well, and this is one of the, I think, most important examples for this group. It didn't take long for people to realize that ISPs had a lot of data. ISPs had been, for a while, just pipelines. They were offering just pipelines to the internet for their subscribers, and they weren't monetizing much beyond that. They certainly monitored their pipeline for security, for traffic, for things associated with providing their service, but they weren't monetizing it much beyond that. Well, a number of companies were pretty well funded a few years ago, and they called themselves ISP behavioral targeting. And basically what it was, instead of creating relationships with all the websites out on a network, they would go to the ISP itself and clamp on a box and monitor traffic there, drop a cookie on users in that space, and then monetize that data for the ISP and sell advertising out on the web based not on your visits to a network of sites within a confined group of sites that had a relationship with the ad network, but rather all of your surfing coming out of your ISP. Well, here's one of my first lessons. Whatever business model you're pursuing, whatever technology you're pursuing, make sure you name it well early, because they didn't name it well early. They were calling it ISP-BT. And advocates recognized this as tremendously problematic, and I think it was and still is, and called it deep packet inspection. And deep packet inspection, and the other is never let the government name your product or service, because they call things carnivore and total information awareness. And Ari's here in the audience. I know when they do that, he's probably sitting back at the CDT and thinking, they're just making it too easy for me now. When your data practice is called carnivore, you probably have a problem. So Nebuad was a company in this space, very well funded, very good relationships early out of the gate with very big telecom and ISP providers. However, the privacy concerns were not addressed well enough. They could not articulate a value proposition for the subscriber. In other words, the subscriber signed up for the ISP, and now the ISP is monetizing this data in other ways. And what does the subscriber get out of that new monetization of their data? Nothing, nothing more at all. So the business model failed outright, and I think the one that is remaining is probably struggling in that space. Now, that's not to say that there might not be a model there that could work, because I think we could probably architect a consent structure, some sort of system where that could fly. But it just didn't happen out of the gate. It wasn't baked in, and as a result, the response was swift and decisive. All right, so what do? Well, first of all, please, nobody in this room think that we can fix this with a thing, with something, right? There's no app for privacy. You cannot, and I heard this a couple times yesterday, and I wanted to jump up, but I didn't. You cannot say, oh, and we worked out the privacy thing because we're doing this, right? That is always a flaw in your thinking if that's how you're approaching it. You cannot fix privacy with a point-in-time solution, with a technology solution. You cannot fix it just by saying, we're going to do this. Because this doesn't answer 27 different ideas of privacy and differing consumer perceptions and contextual consumer perceptions. The other thing is, don't think that you will create data for only the purpose that you created it for. If you create it, if you collect it, they, meaning the biz dev guys, the marketing guys, anyone, the government, they're going to try and use it. ISPs probably didn't think about deep packet inspection when they were building subscriber lines for broadband access to the internet. But if that data exists, multiple monetizations of that data will ultimately be attempted. So let me tell you about, really quickly, some of the exciting things that are happening. I think we're moving towards an era of data environmentalism, where the idea of data is looked at holistically, environmentally. We're seeing some really interesting work around accountability, projects where organizations are being, or are focusing on their practices vis-a-vis the consumer, focusing on securing data flows, being transparent about what they're doing, and certainly responding to notice and choice as required by the law, but not relying on notice and choice as the final arbiters of whether they are doing the right thing or not. Ultimately, what they're looking for are indicators of trust. Remember, consumers don't want choice, they want trust. They want to make choices based on a brand, a name that they know and can trust. And that probably means a set of data practices that are more limited than you may otherwise want. I mentioned the work of Arkham Fung and others at the Transparency Project at the JFK School of Government. That's really fascinating work. The other thing that the FTC is working on right now, and this has been an enormous barrier in the privacy space, is a concept of harm. We struggle in privacy because if I'm behaviorally targeted, what is the harm? If my data is used or misused according to me, what is the harm? And our legal system works by attaching money value, dollar value to harm, and we haven't been really good at that yet. And so the FTC, with the most recent appointment of a chairman and a head of consumer protection, is actually looking at harm as a concept of human dignity. And that is new ground for them, and we'll see where that goes. The other thing that I should tell you, I must tell you, is that there's a new profession growing out there. We have been adding about 100 members a month at the IAPP, and I think this is part of that data environmentalism approach, that we are now looking at data as a business management practice. Our conferences are filled with sessions about data classification audits and data flow audits and technologies for understanding data leakage within your organization, encryption tools, training tools. All of those things are part of this new profession practicing in this field. We have 6,000 members around the world. Please visit our site. At the end of the day, I hope that all of us can be as smart as my local tattoo parlor. This is the town next to me. I don't have any tattoos. I was driving down the road and was struck by this sign. This tattoo artist gets it. He understands that his business is predicated upon the ability for him to provide privacy to his customers. So if someone is going to come in, drop their pants, and expose their fragile truth, and get some flower or butterfly or star or something painted on them, they want privacy. So he gets it. He gets it. He understands that privacy must be available. It's available contextually. Maybe if they're just getting, their school logo on their forearm, they don't care as much. But if they really want privacy, they can have it through his tattoo parlor. That's all I had. Thank you very much. Okay.